There are two maps of the United States. The first map you already know, 50 states, a coastline on the Atlantic and another on the Pacific, national parks in green, highways in gray, cities in the places rivers made geography convenient. The map of a country that has been opened, settled, photographed, and documented from every possible angle. The second map is harder to find. It shows the islands, and there are hundreds of them, that the United States government will not let you visit. Not because they're remote, not because they're exotic, but because of what America did on them. What is stored there, what was tested there, what is buried there, and in some cases, what it's still trying across decades to clean up, is what we're going to discover in this video. Because these are 25 of the hidden islands of the United States, and together, they describe a different version of American geography. One that shows what a government chooses to hide in the places it's most sure nobody is watching. The first 5 islands share a category. They are the military's inheritance. The places America built weapons platforms, ran experiments, and fought its bloodiest island battles. The places where the strategic logic was clear and the environmental accounting has never been fully balanced. Island 1. Johnston Atoll sits 900 miles southwest of Hawaii, a coral platform roughly 2 miles long and half a mile wide. You cannot visit. The reason involves 4 different categories of contamination, layered on top of each other across 60 years. The United States tested nuclear weapons there. In June 1962, Operation Starfish Prime detonated a 1.4 megaton thermonuclear warhead 250 miles above the Pacific. The electromagnetic pulse reached Hawaii. It knocked out streetlights. It triggered burglar alarms. It shut down radio communications across the islands for 30 minutes. People in Honolulu went outside and watched the sky turn red. That was just the beginning of what Johnston Atoll was used for. The atoll stored biological weapons. It then stored chemical weapons, nerve agents, and mustard gas. It was treated with Agent Orange. It absorbed plutonium contamination from missile safety tests. And then, from 1990 to 2000, it became the site of the Johnston Atoll Chemical Agent Disposal System, a facility that employed 1,200 people whose purpose was to incinerate the chemical munitions that had accumulated over the previous 4 decades. The facility closed in 2004. The remediation was declared complete. Independent environmental scientists note that complete and clean are not the same word. What happens after a military island outlives its usefulness is exactly the pattern you'll see across everything that follows, so hold that question. Because Wake Island answers it differently. And that is Island 2. Wake Island is 3 coral reefs around a lagoon 7,000 miles from Washington, D.C., still controlled by the United States Air Force. The island's entire modern history starts in December 1941, when the Japanese captured it from a small American garrison after a fierce 2-week battle. What most accounts don't tell you is what came after. 98 American civilian contractors were left on the island after the main prisoner group was transported to Japan. In October 1943, the Japanese commander, facing an American naval bombardment and fearing the prisoners would signal enemy ships, ordered all 98 executed. They were blindfolded and machine-gunned on the beach. One man escaped into the jungle. He scratched his American POW number into a coral rock and was then found, recaptured, and personally beheaded by the commanding officer with a sword. The commander was later convicted of war crimes and executed. No memorial marks the site on Wake Island where the 98 died. The Air Force still controls the island. You cannot visit. Some islands carry their history visibly, others bury it. Tinian is the 3rd island, and its history is as visible as history gets, which makes the current silence around it more deliberate than most. Island 3. Tinian, in the Northern Mariana Islands, is where the Enola Gay took off on August 6, 1945. The North Field runways are still there, overgrown with brush, but structurally intact. For decades after the war, the island was largely quiet farmland. Now the United States military is building it back. A new live fire training range, a new airfield, a forward base positioned in striking range of China. The construction is happening now in 2026. The people of Tinian watch this second military chapter begin, and some of them note they were not meaningfully consulted about the first one either. Island 4. Pagan Island is the largest of the Northern Mariana Islands above Saipan, volcanic, green, dramatically beautiful, and it has been effectively empty for 40 years. Its last permanent residents, indigenous Chamorro and Carolinian communities, were evacuated after a 1981 volcanic eruption and told they could return when it was safe. The Marines filed for the island as a live fire training range. The legal dispute has dragged across multiple courts and multiple decades. The volcano is still active. The Marines are still interested. The families who were evacuated are still waiting. Island 5. Kaho'olawe is a small island off the coast of Maui, and for 50 years the United States Navy used it as a bombing range. The Navy finally returned it to the state of Hawaii in 1994, at which point the full reckoning arrived. An estimated 9.8 million pounds of unexploded ordnance distributed across an island that the native Hawaiian tradition considers the embodiment of a god, the spiritual vessel of Kane. The cleanup is ongoing. It is projected to continue for another 100 years. Kaho'olawe is technically Hawaiian territory. In practice, you cannot enter it without a permit, a safety briefing, and documented training in ordnance recognition. That is what a half-century of bombing leaves behind. But there is a different kind of restricted island, and in some ways, more haunting, because these next 5 are not locked to hide damage done. They're locked to protect something still fragile enough to lose. What's living on them is, in its own way, as strange as anything the military buried. Island 6. The Farallon Islands are 27 miles west of San Francisco, visible from the Golden Gate Bridge on a clear day. They house the largest seabird nesting colony on the U.S. West Coast, nearly 300,000 breeding birds across 13 species, and one of the highest concentrations of great white sharks in the world. A research station is maintained by Point Blue Conservation Science. Almost no one else is allowed on the islands. What's discussed less is what's underneath them. Between 1946 and 1970, the United States authorized the dumping of approximately 47,500 barrels of radioactive waste directly into the ocean off the Farallons. The barrels contained low-level nuclear waste from weapons programs, hospitals, and research laboratories. They are still there. Some are believed to be leaking. The ocean has not, so far, sent the contamination back, but the USGS confirmed the barrel's presence in 1980, and the monitoring has been intermittent in the decades since. Island 7. Midway Atoll sits 1,000 miles northwest of Honolulu, in the place where the Japanese fleet was broken in June 1942, in what historians consider the turning point of the Pacific War. The island does not look like a battlefield now. It is the breeding ground of more than 1.2 million Laysan albatrosses, the largest single-species seabird colony on Earth. The birds return every November and lay their eggs on ground that still, occasionally, turns up aircraft wreckage. Access for research is permitted by application. The albatrosses have no idea what happened here. Island 8. Palmyra Atoll is the southernmost point of United States territory in the Pacific, a coral atoll so remote that it went uninhabited for decades at a stretch. In 1974, 2 people arrived there by sailboat and were murdered. Their killers were eventually caught after sailing the victim's vessel back to Hawaii. One murder was prosecuted to conviction. The second was not. The legal case turned on a single piece of evidence that no one could fully explain. Palmyra Atoll is now a national wildlife refuge. Access requires a research or conservation permit. The lagoon is one of the most pristine marine environments in the United States. Island 9. Howland Island is a flat, treeless atoll near the equator, 2,400 miles from Hawaii. It was the intended destination of Amelia Earhart's 1937 Pacific Crossing. The radio operator stationed on the island spent hours waiting, broadcasting, trying to guide her aircraft in. He believed he heard her transmissions. They were the last anyone received from the Electra. Howland Island is now a seabird sanctuary, accessible only under federal permit. The aircraft has not been found. The island is exactly as it was, a quiet, windswept piece of coral, and it waits as it always has. Island 10, Laysan Island, 200 miles northwest of Kauai, was mined for guano in the 1890s. European rabbits were introduced to the island in the early 1900s, and the rabbits ate everything. Every plant, every shrub, every blade of grass. The island became a desert. 3 bird species went extinct. Conservationists eventually eradicated the rabbits. The vegetation grew back across decades. The birds returned. Laysan Island is now one of the most successful ecological restorations in the Pacific, which is precisely why it is sealed to anyone without a federal research permit. The thing that took a century to rebuild is not worth risking on casual visitors. 5 ecological islands, each sealed off for what it still contains. But neither category, military legacy or ecological sanctuary, quite prepares you for the next group. Because the most unsettling restricted islands in America are not in the Pacific. They are in the East River and in New York Harbor, and they are invisible to 10 million people who pass within sight of them every single day. Island 11. North Brother Island sits in the East River between the Bronx and Rikers Island. You can see it from the elevated train on the South Bronx side, a green mass of trees with buildings visible underneath, or what's left of buildings. Access is legally prohibited for most of the year as it serves as a bird sanctuary. But the island is covered in structures, a hospital complex, nurses' residences, a brick chapel, all abandoned since 1963, all slowly being consumed by whatever grows through concrete when nobody stops it. Mary Mallon, Typhoid Mary, lived and died here. She was an Irish-born cook who worked in wealthy Manhattan households, and she was identified as an asymptomatic carrier of typhoid fever, infected but never sick herself. The city quarantined her twice. The second quarantine lasted 26 years, from 1915 until she died on the island in 1938. She was detained without trial in an era when the law had no good answer for someone who could spread disease without knowing it. But the island's other story is worse. On June 15, 1904, this exact day 122 years ago, the steamship General Slocum caught fire in the East River while carrying 1,358 German-American day trippers on a church excursion. Most were women and children from the tenements of the Lower East Side. The captain drove the burning ship toward North Brother Island. 1,021 people died. It was the deadliest disaster in New York City history until September 11, 2001. The hospital on the island treated survivors, then tuberculosis patients, then heroin addicts. Then it closed. The island has been abandoned for 60 years and gives no indication it intends to change. Island 12. Hart Island is 1.5 miles long in Long Island Sound, and over 1 million people are buried there. It is New York City's Potter's Field, the resting place of those who die without family or funds to arrange burial. The burials were performed until 2015 exclusively by prison labor from Rikers Island. Incarcerated men paid 50 cents a day to bury the city's unclaimed dead. Family members of those buried on Hart Island were for decades denied access to visit their relatives' graves. The island is now administered by the Parks Department. It is still not easy to visit. There are no headstones for most of the buried. Island 13. Hoffman Island and Island 14, Swinburne Island, are 2 artificial landmasses built from landfill in lower New York Harbor in the 1870s, constructed specifically to serve as quarantine stations, the processing point for immigrants suspected of carrying epidemic diseases. Thousands were held in the facilities built on these islands. Both are now crumbling ruins, part of the Gateway National Recreation Area on paper, practically inaccessible to anyone. They sit in the harbor like parentheses around a sentence. New York stopped wanting to finish. 4 islands within 10 miles of Times Square. No signs, no ferries, no public information. A city that curates its own history in bronze and glass and memorial museums, and leaves these 4 islands to decay in a silence that is not accidental. But even that deliberate forgetting is less calculated than what comes next, because the following 3 islands were not forgotten. They were built for a specific scientific purpose, and what happened on each of them is still being debated. Island 15. Plum Island is 2 miles of land in Long Island Sound, 3 miles off the coast of Connecticut. For most of the 20th century, it housed the USDA's Plum Island Animal Disease Center, a biosafety facility studying foot and mouth disease and other agricultural pathogens, equipped with its own ferry, its own power plant, its own on-site housing. Workers changed their clothes on arrival. Nothing biological left the island without authorization. Here is the theory you are not supposed to take seriously, and yet cannot fully dismiss. Plum Island is 9 miles from the town of Lyme, Connecticut, where a mysterious joint swelling illness was first identified in 1975, the illness now called Lyme disease, which infects 400,000 Americans every year. Documented research on ticks was conducted at the facility. The timeline overlaps. The geography is striking. The connection has never been confirmed by any peer-reviewed study. The island was sold to a private developer in 2023. Construction is planned. Whatever the facility's full record contained, it will not be easy to access going forward. Island 16. Amchitka Island is at the western end of the Aleutian Chain in Alaska, near the edge of the Russian maritime boundary. The United States detonated 3 underground nuclear devices there, in 1965, in 1969, and in 1971. The third, codenamed Kanakin, was the largest underground nuclear explosion in U.S. history, releasing energy equivalent to approximately 5 million tons of TNT. In the year before the test, a small protest flotilla set sail from Vancouver to try to stop it. That flotilla was the founding mission of Greenpeace. The tests are finished. Radioactive groundwater has since been detected in monitoring wells on the island. Amchitka remains restricted, classified under the US DOE's Legacy Management Program. The question of whether the contamination is migrating toward the Pacific is still, technically, being studied. Island 17. Enewetak Atoll is in the Marshall Islands, a Pacific nation that the United States administered as a trust territory from 1947 to 1986. In that time, the U.S. detonated 43 nuclear devices there, displacing the atoll's indigenous population entirely. When the testing ended, the United States gathered the radioactive debris and buried it beneath a concrete dome on Runit Island, a structure designed as a temporary solution that has now lasted 50 years. The dome is cracking. It sits on porous coral, and nuclear-contaminated water flows beneath it directly into the lagoon. The Marshall Islands government says it is a crisis. The United States government calls it manageable. The people displaced from Enewetak have been waiting to return home for 80 years. These 3 islands describe what the United States does when science, or its military applications, needs distance from witnesses, which makes the last 2 categories more disorienting, because the final islands on this list are not hidden by geography or classification. They are hidden by a different mechanism entirely. Island 18. Navassa Island is a small Caribbean island between Haiti and Jamaica. It is United States territory by virtue of the Guano Islands Act of 1857, a law that allowed American citizens to claim any uninhabited island with bird droppings as federal territory. Haiti has claimed sovereignty over Navassa since 1801. The United States does not agree. In 1889, black laborers working on Navassa, mining guano under conditions widely described as brutal, revolted. 5 supervisors were killed. 43 men were arrested. 3 were sentenced to death. The resulting Supreme Court case, Jones versus United States, became a landmark ruling establishing U.S. plenary authority over unincorporated territories. The legal logic of that case, that Congress could govern territories without extending constitutional protections to their inhabitants, shaped the legal status of Puerto Rico, Guam, and every other unincorporated territory to this day. Navassa Island is now a national wildlife refuge. Access requires a federal permit. Haiti still claims it. Island 19. San Nicolas Island 59 miles off the coast of Los Angeles, is owned by the United States Navy and used as a military testing range. In 1835, the island's Chumash population was evacuated to the mainland. A woman was left behind, whether by accident or design was never established, and she survived alone on San Nicolas Island for 18 years. When she was finally discovered and brought to the mainland in 1853, she died within 7 weeks, her immune system offering no defense against diseases she had never encountered. Her name was never recorded. The island that held her is still Navy property you cannot visit. She is the basis of Scott Odell's novel Island of the Blue Dolphins. Island 20. Jarvis Island is a flat coral atoll in the Central Pacific, administered by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. In 1935, the Roosevelt administration launched a project to send small groups of young Hawaiian men, mostly teenagers, to inhabit 4 uninhabited U.S. Pacific islands. They lived in corrugated iron shacks, kept weather records, and maintained radio contact with the outside world. The Jarvis colonists were evacuated in 1942 when a Japanese submarine surfaced and shelled the island. They never returned. Island 21. Baker Island and Island 22, Kingman Reef, are 2 of the most remote pieces of American territory in the Pacific. Baker Island was among the stations where radio operators waited for Amelia Earhart in 1937. Kingman Reef is barely above sea level, more lagoon than land, technically a United States territory, practically a place no one has ever had reason to go. Both are national wildlife refuges. Both require federal permits for access. Both appear on almost no tourist map. They are pieces of a country that does not know it owns them. 3 more islands remain, and they are the strangest of all, not because of what America did on them, but because of how completely America has managed to forget about them while keeping them in full public view. Island 23. McNeil Island sits in Puget Sound, 14 miles south of Tacoma, visible from the mainland on a clear day. A federal penitentiary operated there from 1875 to 1981. A Washington state facility ran until 2011, making McNeil one of the last operating island prisons in the continental United States. The buildings are still standing. The ferry that served the island no longer runs. The island is accessible only by boat with authorization. No tourists, no visitors. A fully intact correctional facility surrounded by water, sitting quietly in a sound that thousands of people sail through every year without knowing it's there. Island 24. Ellis Island is the most visited island in New York Harbor, but almost every visitor sees only the North Building, the main immigrant processing hall, restored and turned into a museum. The south and west wings of Ellis Island, the immigrant hospital complex, the psychiatric ward, the contagious disease wards, the dormitories, have been locked and decaying since 1954. Over 24 buildings on a small island 40 feet away from the operating museum, in plain view from the ferry, visible from every angle. Vines push through the windows. Floors have collapsed in places. The hospital that processed 12 million immigrants is rotting in full public view, and the argument about what to do with it has been going on for 70 years. Island 25. Fort Carroll is a man-made hexagonal island in the Patapsco River in Baltimore Harbor, built between 1847 and 1851 as a Civil War-era coastal defense. Robert E. Lee supervised its initial construction. This was before the war, before everything else, when he was a young Army Corps of Engineers officer, and the fort was just a project with a design problem. The fort was never finished. It never fired a shot in combat. It was sold to a private owner in 1958. It sits in the middle of Baltimore's harbor, completely inaccessible to the public, slowly being consumed by trees and birds and the patient indifference of time. Most Baltimore residents do not know it exists. It is visible from the highway bridge. You can see it from the water taxis. No one mentions it. There are 2 maps of the United States. The first map is about access. It describes a very large country with an impressive commitment to public land, open coasts, and national parks. It is, in many ways, an accurate map. It tells a real story. This map tells a different story. 25 islands locked by military order, by ecological necessity, by bureaucratic inertia, by the slow physics of things done there that cannot be undone. Some are dangerous, some are healing, some are hiding in the East River, some are 900 miles into the Pacific with plutonium in the soil, and 1,200 people's worth of chemical weapons residue in the groundwater. What they share is not danger, it is inconvenience. These are the places where the long consequences of American history are still playing out in real time. Too complex to exhibit, too important to abandon, too difficult to explain at a museum entrance placard. So they are locked. And the lock is maintained not by guards or high fences mostly, but by the simpler fact that the ferry doesn't run there, and the map doesn't show them, and it's easier for everyone to pretend they aren't part of the country at all. The map you have been given shows you where you can go. This map shows you where everything else ended up.